All right, good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Samaches, yesterday is Samach Zayin. So we left off at the Mishnah at the bottom, Samach Vatim Beis. So the Mishnah over there is stated. So before we get into this, actually, the Gemara is going to sort of introduce. What is it?
I was going to get you a copy.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. Sure, thank you. So the Gemara is going to sort of introduce. So the Gemara gets into the source for our Mishnah, one of which is based upon the Psukim. So it might as well. We'll see that. Actually, we'll see that when we get there. So let's start the Mishnah. Damar Rasa. So you have a Nara. A Nara is a girl between the ages of 12 and 12 and a half. So she's still technically not completely independent of her father. However, there is some aspects where she belong, quote unquote, belong to her father. And if she is muresses, right, if she is betrothed to another man, and once again, when a woman is married, she's fully married, belongs to that guy. When she's nothing, then obviously she's nothing. But when she's betrothed, then she's sort of, is quote unquote, is owned, whatever, not owned necessarily, but he has different rights when it comes to her. So now Marasa, so this girl who is half in her father's house, half betrothed, Avia Ubaila Mafrina Derel. The father and her husband can nullify her vows. We'll soon see what the first line of the Gemara, I won't give it away, can nullify their vows. And therefore, next part of the Mishnah, the middle cases of the Mishnah, Heifir Av Heifir Abal, and therefore top line is Samach Zayin Amud Aleph. If the husband goes ahead and nullifies her vows, Heifir Abal, but the husband did not, or Heifir Abal, if the husband did have Heifir Av and the father did not, Ein Mufar, then her neder is not nullified, is not revoked. And therefore, you don't have to say certainly. If one of them is Mikayim, the nether. In other words, let's say the father hears his daughter says, all right, we'll just use it. She makes a nether, I will not going to shallots. So the father says, good, right? Yeah, I'm all for it. Her husband hears about it, then he revokes it. So that's the case. Certainly, we don't even have to say that case that the nether is not qualified because the father was Mikayim the nether, right? He upheld, he confirmed the nether. Fine. So that was the Mishnah. So first, the Gemara says, I understand what the need of the second case is, right? When the father, if he once goes ahead and revokes it, but the husband did not, or the husband and the father did not, right? The first part of the Mishnah said, right? The father and husband, do it together. So Hainu Reisha. So the Gemara answers, no. Hainu Reisha, Avio Bala Mefrin Darel. That the father and the husband go ahead and make it in the dark. So Mal's name, what would you have said? Oh, Avio Obala Katani. What would you have said? Maybe it's either or, right? Either the father can revoke it or the husband can. So Kamash Malad, then no, they both have to go ahead and do it together, right? So only the power of the two of them, that's what it's done. And then the third part of the mission says, so Lamali, why do you have Lamali miss? Why do you think it's the case? If one of them hears it, then he revokes, and the other one doesn't hear it. So nevertheless, that doesn't work. So Kai Mechamiham, let me see, right? So if what was that? Yeah. So if one of them, right, so certainly if one of them just did it, so the other one is Mekayim, and the other one revokes it. So of course that doesn't work because even if the other one doesn't uphold it or confirm it, just one revokes it, the other one doesn't do anything. So it's not revoked. So Gemara says no. What happened? One of them heard it and he revoked it. Now he's waiting for the other one, and the other one hears it and he's mekayim. He confirms it, and then what happened? The chazer hamakayim. Then let's say the father confirmed the shallots about, right. Then he says, oh yes, charata. Maybe she's gonna have to cook all her life and this and that. So then he goes and he's to a Beis Din to have his kiyum to be matir. He wants to go ahead and be matir his kiyum. So and then that gets uplifted. So Malzeh Moshe said, "My duki hadid akre." that which he confirmed it, he uprooted. And therefore, it's basically like he can go ahead and revoke it now with the other, with the other party, let's say with the husband. So Kamash Malon, the Mefir of Asachas. And that's Kamash Malon, that which they can go ahead and they revoke the vow. It's only without when it says what was the lashon here? B'vasachas. B'vasachas doesn't mean at the same time. Doesn't necessarily even have the same day. It means there can't be a hefsek in between, and the hefsek would be if one of them is mekayim the vow. So therefore, if one of them is mekayim, right? So then it can no longer be revoked, even if afterwards he has his kiyum be uplifted. Fine.
So the husband was just like re-maker.
Right.
Okay.
But that right, it doesn't work.
But it doesn't work.
Right. Kamashma doesn't. So if he's mekayim it, and he goes out and he goes to a Beis Din to have his kiyum be matir.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, it's basically it gets set back. It's like he never was mekayim it, and now let him go ahead and revoke it. And his revocation, right, with the husband did should work to work, right? So Kamash that doesn't work. That's what it means. Even if it's matir,
but the husband now can do it again.
But to what? To revoke it.
Yeah, meaning
right,
the father would have revoked it.
The father revoked it originally. The husband was mekayim it, and then he was matir his kiyum, and then he wants to go ahead and revoke it. Now the both of us revoked it. It should work. Kamashwara does it because that's not considered vasachas, because once he was mekayim it, he already ruined that circumstance. Even though we can erase it, right? You can still sort of see the eraser mark. Now, it's a little introduction. Right, the article has an introduction with the psukim. So just first thing is first. Also, there's going to be a brisa, which are actually we're going to see in a second daf. That when it comes to a husband being nullifying the nether revoking, right? It doesn't really nullify it; revokes it. It's two different cases. It normally has to be b'yom shema, right? The day he hears it, so he hears that his daughter or the husband hears that his wife. Right, the day they make it, so then at that point in time, they have to go ahead and revoke it. They can't go ahead and hear it, and 4 days later go ahead and revoke it. It has to be during the time. And if they hear it and don't revoke it, so that is considered to be a key. Fine. Now, we have the beginning of Parsha Matas. There's around 17 psukim, actually one less, 16 psukim, because the first pasuk of the parak is the last pasuk of the previous Parsha. I think, right? Looks like that. Anyway, yeah. So the first part deals with this. Now, there's a concentration of the psukim of, and those of you have the article, there's actually an introduction in the article, which has, I guess, whatever, right before the first parak. So the psukim, Daled, Hey, and Vav, right, deal over there where it says, V'isha kisidor nedela, sheva asa isa b'vei savia b'norel. So it talks about when she's b'vei savia b'norel. So those psukim, and then it says if he revokes it, if he confirms it, right? Right. So over there, Daled, Hey, and Vav clearly deal with when she's b'vei savia in her father's house, b'norel, while she's a nara. Then there's the next group psukim, zayin ches tes, and it says over there, ish, or if she's with a man, i.e., she's married. Right, and she has previous vows. It could be a case of right, or she makes them upon herself now. Then her husband hears. So those psukim also deal with the next situation. All right. Then, before we define which situation that is talking about, there's pasuk takes a break. Right, so Amon or Grusha, there's no husband, right? But then it says the next pasuk, Psukim Yud Aleph, Yibeiz Gimel, V'im Beis Isha in her husband's house, Nadra Asra Isha. So he makes a shvua, or Neder shvua, and that is definitely talking about when a woman is nesua, is married to her to a husband, and he's responsible. So the third group of psukim is talking about a woman who is a nesua, married to a man. The first group of psukim is called the nara beisavia, and the second the psukim we're trying to figure out psukim zayin chestes. So now let's see the Gemara. Zok the Gemara So now Marasa Aviu Bala Mefer Nadar. So the husband and the father and the husband, they can be Mefer in the Nadar. Now, Minolan, from where we know is from Amar Rabba, Amar Akra, the Pasuk says, Vimhayu Asiya Leish, right? She's with a man, she's married with a Darel Allah, and she's in Darmaner. So Mikal and Amarasa Shaviu Bala Mefer Nadar. Right? From here we see that a Nara Marasa, right, a girl who's a Nara and she's a betrothed, then her father and her husband revoke her vows together. Fine. So that is the source. So obviously, now if you want to take it as it is, then you can just basically skip over to the top of Samaches Amun Aleph. If you want to understand how this works, so let's see. So the Gemara says, hey, where do you get that from? So Ema Hai Krab in a Suaksi. So let's say, who says these psukim over here where it says Vimhayu Siya Leish right, when she is to a man, right? Who says that's talking about Namarasa? Maybe we're talking about a Nara who is in the Suah. Ema Hai Krab in the Suaksi. So the Gemara says, no, Imashum the Suah Krachina Ksiva. We have another psukim. It says, right, psukim Yud Aleph, Vim Beis Isha Nadra, right? Nadara. So if she's in her husband, the house of her husband, right, she makes a nether. So that's talking about in the Suah. So this obviously must be talking about Erison. So God says, I aim a Tarvayu ben Suah. Maybe both of them are referring to the Suah. So obvious the question is, if that's the case, why didn't you psukim to tell me by Nesuah that a husband who is fully married to a woman can revoke her vows? So maybe one of them is Shein Habal Mefer B'Kaiman. So maybe the third set of or the third group psukim, which is the second one by Nesuah, psukim Yud Aleph Yud Beis Yud Gimel, is referring to that a husband cannot revoke vows from before, right? Because it says if she makes vows now, right? And then the second group of psukim, Zayin Chestes, are talking about that he can go ahead, right, and revoke vows that she makes now, right? So the Maimon wants to say you can go ahead and revoke vows that she makes now during the Suin. And the other group is a teacher that he cannot go ahead and revoke vows that she took prior when she was in her father's house. So Gemara says, so that you would automatically knows once you're telling me, right, in the third group that she can't revoke vows that she made in her father's house. So it means I know she can revoke. So when can he revoke vows? The ones that she makes now. So I don't need another group to tell me that he can go ahead and revoke the vows she makes now, because we can infer from the first or from the other halacha they cannot. So that's one reason to say they're both now referring to the Sunnah or V'Boy Sema, or you could say the Havya, the Kedushin Mashma, right? The second group of Sukkot says V'Hayu Siya Leish, right? And the word Havya, right, over there means if she is to a man, we know that Lashon refers to Kedushin most times throughout the Torah. So therefore, we see it's referring to Kedushin. Kedushin is Erison. So therefore, that's how we know the second group of Sukkot is not talking about a woman who's married to a man, who's Nesuah to a man. Rather, we're talking about a woman who is Mureses. So the Gemara says, okay, fine. So we're talking about a girl who is Mureses, right? So she's a Mureses, she's a Nara, and so she's sort of in her father's house, sort of in her husband's house. So Ema Ab L'chude Mefer. Let's say that the father is the one who can go ahead and nullify the vows. So Ivim came, Valser Isa Beis Aviyah. So maybe it means like this. Maybe it's the father can go ahead and do it on his own, right? And the husband also revokes it. And why do you need the husband? What's the halacha by the husband revoking it? It could be that which we say the husband, can revoke the vow means if you can go ahead and be mefer it, you can also be mekayim it. So maybe if the husband is mekayim, he says, yes, that's a good vow, it's a good neder. So that could block a potential hafara from the father. But if he doesn't, he's not mekayim it, then the father can go ahead and do it on his own. All right, so that's the Gemara's question. If that's the case, when she's her husband's house and he confirms the lamali, so now now that's referring to, one second. The first group of psukim was Dalav. All right. So it says, if we're saying, right, that the father can go ahead, if we have the lamali, why do I need the first set of psukim? If you're telling me, you're suggesting that the father alone can revoke his Naro Murasa's, right? She's already betrothed, and he still can go ahead and revoke it by himself. So why do you need those? The first three psukim to teach you that a father with his daughter who's a pnuya, who's not engaged at all, he can go ahead and nullify her vows. If now when she's already betrothed to somebody else, the father still has the kayach to go ahead and be mayfair, right? His daughter by lechude on his own. Right? You got to teach me a halacha when she's not engaged, you can revoke it. Then I wouldn't need the first set of psukim. If the father lechude can go ahead by himself revoke the vows when she has a husband, and even though she's partly owned by her arus, nevertheless the father himself can revoke it on her nadarim on his own. Certainly, if she's not an arusa, certainly the father can revoke it. If that's the case, there's no need of psukim in pasuk daled hey and vav. So Gemara says, okay, let's flip flop it. All right, so maybe the father needs the arus, and the arus himself can go ahead and revoke the vows by himself. If that's the case, so then what is the father doing in the pasuk? So we can say the opposite, right? In other words, that once again, if the father hears while she's an amarasa and he's mekayim the vow, he says, "Okay, this is good. You're not." As we say, you're not going to go to shallots. So then the husband, when he hears, he can't revoke it because it's already been mekayim by the other quote unquote party and vow, right? But if the father didn't hear and the husband hears and it revokes it, maybe that would work. In Cain, right? If that's the case, base isha nedra lamaik, right? If that's the case. Right. So what does the pasuk of the psukim yud aleph yud beis gimel? If your suggestion that the husband can nullify the vows and she's still only moreses, right? So what are those pasuk? If when there's a father around, the arus can go ahead. In other words, when she's only moreses, nevertheless her arus can go ahead and revoke the vows by himself. When she's in a suah, right? When there is no father at all, certainly he can go ahead and revoke the vows. So the Gemara says, "So ema im beis isha nadra l'mashin abal mefer kaiten." Right? Okay, so maybe we can say like this. Maybe we can learn over there that the husband himself can revoke it when she's not marasa. And why do you say case of psukim? Of course, you can go ahead and revoke it because when he's an aris, he can do it lechude. Certainly, when she's a nesua, he can go ahead and revoke it lechude, right, by himself. So maybe it means that no, because when he's nesua, right, when she's in nesua, he can't revoke prior vows that she took before she ever met this guy, right? Masha'enkin and aris can. So maybe Shane Abal Mefin Kaidman. Once you hear it. In other words, when you hear the vow, if he didn't know she had a vow, so the person got engaged to a man, and then he hears about it that she made a vow. Oh no, that's not happening, young lady. Right? We're gonna revoke that puppy, right? So Gar says, "Umine," but no, from it we can learn from it that an arus maybe b'kaiden. I understand, but if you learn from there that if automatically, if you're the halach, and the second one is that by nasui, right, that he can't revoke earlier ones, dafka that one. So it must be that an arus could. So arus b'kaiden. So elav shmamina should say da'at. Rather, it must be that no, since there is no chiddush, right, that would require all three psukim or all three groups of psukim, it must be the psukim zayin, ches, and tes together mean that the husband and the father, they revoke the vow together. They need both of them to go ahead and the day that they hear it to revoke the vow, and that's how the nether is voked. Otherwise, it's not. So that was the source of Rabbah. So that was what we did till now for the two dots here was Rabbah's proof that Namarasa is her vows and nedarim are revoked by the combination of both the father and the husband, and they need that together. Now,
they both have to do it, but where's the
so vazakas means that they can't use, once they hear it, they have to revoke it. In other words, even though it's not necessarily the same day, right? But we see that we both need the power. If one of them is, because remember, if you hear it and you don't revoke it, you're makayim it, right? And the pasuk talks about, right, they use the lashon of yania, right? When they hear the yania, so once they confirm it, that's already you have lost your opportunity to revoke it. So therefore, that's what it means vasachas. What we said earlier is that if one goes ahead and confirms it, he hears it, and then 3 days later, right, he wants to revoke it, that doesn't work. There's already a hefsek that he heard it, he didn't nullify it, and therefore, if you didn't nullify it, right, if you're not with them, you're against them, right? If you didn't go ahead and revoke it upon hearing it, then it's considered to be confirmed, and once it's confirmed by one of the two parties between the father and the husband, then the other party can't go ahead and revoke it.
So the word is also assuming that, let's say, a girl who's 10 years old who made a vow, and the father gives her over to be married when it becomes an arm stuff, and she made the vow though when she was 10,
right,
or whatever, that he didn't know about.
So right, so over here, so even before, so Zevi says, so in that case, in other words, when we're talking about she made it when she was 12, and then 3 months later she got engaged. So yeah.
So we're assuming then that the father didn't know about it.
Right. So right, correct. Because if the father knew about it and he heard about it and he confirmed it, then it's over. Right, then it's over. Then even the right. So that was that source. Now Tana, so debate Rabbi Shmuel, right? This is now on top of today's daf. They actually have a little easier source. The debate Rabbi Shmuel Tana says, no, look at the end of this parsha, or this. It says over there, Beit Ish le'ishtay, Ben Av lebita. So the pasuk over here says, the pasuk in Zion says, Eila chukim asher tziva Hashem as much as ended by the Nadarim, right? Ben Ish le'ishtay, Ben Av lebita, Ben Ura, Ben Savia. So Pashat it says that there it brings Ish le'ishto, Av lebita, Ben Ura. So that's referring to Namarasa, that both you need the Ish and the Av, right? So that Ben Ish le'ishto, Ben Av lebita, Mikal Namarasa, Shavia Ubala Mefren Dera. And the Gemara does not ask on that source. So that was Tan de Bevishmel. So the Gemara says, Tan de Bevishmel. My avile. So what do they do with the psukim? Zayin Chestes. We had a whole libra over there that's coming to teach you the by Namarasa, the Avia Ubalam, friend of the Rel. So what do they do with that pasuk over there? My avile. So mukim leidach the Rab, right? The Rabba to Rabba, right? So they learn out that the other limud of. Actually, Rava, right? So the other limit of Rava, which over there is brought down to teach you that if you have a case of a woman who gets, let's say, she's mereses to a man, and then he either dies or he divorces her, that she actually goes back to her father's house just like she was never, married or engaged, and therefore she's, is betrothed to another man. So therefore, just like the father, whatever rights the father had the first time she was mereses, he also has the same rights the second time she's mereses, because she was never fully in Suah. So that is a limit for that pasuk. That was a limit of Rava, and that's what the Beit Rabbi Shmuel do with this pasuk.
The one turns into Rava.
What?
The one turns it back to Rava.
Right. The Rabbah, who brought the earlier, who had the previous source. So what does Rabbah do with this pasuk of the Beit Rabbi Shmuel? The Rabbah, hi, the Tani the Beit Rabbi Shmuel, what do they do with that? That's Leimar, Shabal, Meifir in the Raim, Leveno, right? To teach you that there's really two types of Nadarim. It's a bigger Chiddush here, right? That you might think that is just Nadarim that could, so it's, in other words, by default, it's all types of Nadarim. There's Nadarim that could affect their personal relationship. Whether, let's say, she says that she's not going to put on makeup, or she's not going to bathe, or not going to eat meat, or whatever it is, that could affect that's the Ran Beino Levena. There's also Nadarim that really won't affect their personal relationship. So all of those Nadarim are included, and we see that from the pasuk of Ben Ish Ishto, that is learned out from that pasuk. Fine. Now, one last question of today's daf, right? But don't let that confuse you, because now we get into Lumdus. So Baal Midas Gaius. So the two of them do it together. So now when the husband, let's say the husband hears on day one, he hears or she made it and he revokes it. So is it migas gayes or maklish kalish? Does he, each one does half. So how do you do half? In other words, half of her neder is revoked. He's revoked his side. Now the father has to revoke his side. Or does he take the neder, right? Whatever it is, and weaken its strength by 50%. And when the father hears and revokes it, he removes the other 50%. So of course, with any good question, what's the nafkaminus? Right? What's it? What do you ask? Okay, who cares which way it works? So let's see. The woman says over there, let's say this namarasa, she says, okay, these 2 olives, I'm going to go ahead and make another not to have from these 2 olives. The shama arus, and arus here's the eighth and he revokes it, and she eats the both of them. So if she goes ahead and basically his part he cuts off half. So one of the zaysim he basically completely revoked, but the other one was fully she was fully under a vow, and therefore she can go ahead and she should get malchus or Yamarina Makish Kalish, then Isur Biyama who. But if we just say that he weakens it, so therefore that her nether is now just weakened, and therefore it's not something that's violated that gets malchus, and therefore it's Isur Biyama. So my as he doesn't like it. So Toshma, come and listen. Amesai Amru Meis Habal Nisroikna L'Shus Ha'av.
So if the father of the ball is overseas, and the husband wants the father's overseas.
Right.
Orus is made for everyone here.
Right.
Perhaps the father hasn't heard about it yet.
Right.
So she's in limbo for she's this matter isn't cloud because when he hears about it, he still could be made for it later. It's not when she makes it, it's when he hears about it. So 6 months later, when he comes back, he might be made for it also the day he hears.
Right, and therefore it's nothing.
But
Right.
meantime,
It won't be an hour
she's
anymore.
kind of in limbo where it is a vow, but it can always become not that vow.
She has to treat it.
Right. So even the question over here is because we saw earlier, right? That really has to be confirmed. In other words, one of them doesn't hear it, so it's never really confirmed, right? So therefore, until he hears it, it's not confirmed. So the question is, why would she even get malchus? Even the tzad, that he hasn't revoked it, and let's say it was just done, right? If he didn't hear it yet, in other words, if he hears it and says, okay, that's a good nether, right? So that was the scenario, right? So, but right. So the question is right. So the pair gets more into these halachas in terms of what is the status, until the other party hears. So it's all good question.
Make sure they get a WhatsApp group. So they
Yeah.
hear about it at the same time.
Yeah. So Tashma. So so we say later on, right? It's actually a Mishnah, I think tomorrow. So when do we say Meis Habal, the husband dies, Nisrokna Rishus Habal, that his power of the Baal goes to the Rishus of the father? Bizman Shaloi Shama Habal Kaidem Shiyamus. So we're talking about a case of where either, right, we have 3 scenarios, but Bizman Shaloi Shama Habal Kaidem Shiyamus. So let's say he made the nether, or excuse me, she made the nether, right? He is in the Hebrew word he. She made the nether, right? So she made the nether. He didn't hear. The husband didn't hear. Then he died, so he never heard about it.
So it's not husband, it's
The arus, right? Right. Oh, shishama v'shasa, right? Or he heard it, right? Not v'shasa. I think v'shasa is actually opposite.
Hopper, yeah.
Right. Or it was heard, and let me just find the base, right? Shishama v'hefir, right? Or he heard it and was revoked it and died. Shishama v'hefir umeis, right? Kadam shiamus. Oh, shishama v'hefir. Oh, shishama v'shasak umeis. Bo b'yom. Or heard it, he didn't revoke it, but he died in that day. He still had an opportunity to go ahead and be Mayfair. So in other words, the husband never heard it and was Mekayim. That's what these 3 things do, right? He never heard it, was Mekayim. Either he never heard it at all, or he revoked it right away, or he was going to revoke it and he died. All those cases. These are the cases where we say that the power of the husband now goes to the father. And by the way, this question will be answered at the end of this bryce. The bryce will be actually 5 cases, and at the end of the last case, it will be machlekes, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, and that will get into the machlekes as to one will hold guys, amigas guys, the other one holds Migdash Kolish, right? So don't jump onto this case yet. Is hey, how does this answer the question? Fine. So that was the first case. That was the situation where we say Meis Habal and Nitzach Habal, because over there in this case, meaning that once the husband dies, so now he never revoked the vow. It goes to the father. Now, aval im shama, turn the page. Im shama v'kayim. However, if you did, my bad, right? If he heard shama v'kayim, the husband heard v'shavik. Oh, shama v'shasak umeis v'yayim shalachara.
Yeah.
What was it? Yeah. Yes. So if im shama v'kayim, so he heard it and he was mekayim, or he even heard it and he was quiet and he died the next day, because once again, if you didn't do it bo b'yom, then it's considered like you were mekayim it, right? And yachal lehefir. Then he's no longer able to be nullified. Now, that was that case. Now let's see this case. Now we're going to play off these situations. Shama aviha v'hefir lo. The father heard, and he revoked it. V'lo he speak bal lishmoa ad shemesav. So the father heard her make it, and the father says, nope, this is not going to stand. Revoke. The husband didn't hear yet, and the husband died.
Father.
So he speak about lishma ad shemesav. Excuse me, thank you. Right? We'll have the other case also. Right? So then, Shema v'ya v'hefir, but he speak about lishma ad shemesav, and the father died. So what would you think? Well, the father heard, but he revoked it even. He died, and now it's just a husband. So maybe look.
If he hears it, he could cancel it. So.
Zoe sheshanina meisa'av lo yisrek reshus laba. This is what we talked about, that it does not go to reshus laba. So your question is, right? I would have thought the pashut, right? He did everything, right? So it's like this. Once he dies, right? The punchline is once the father died, it's like his hafara disappears. His hafara doesn't work unless he's partners with the husband.
We saw it earlier in the daf, like this basafas concept.
Right. So therefore, in this case, his hafara is no longer there. His hafara is no longer there, but his shmua was there. His hearing of it is there, and therefore his revocation doesn't work, and therefore the husband can no longer revoke, right? And mitzad from the av, and therefore mesav so once he dies, lebal.
That's not fair. He's now stuck with her.
That is not fair. That is
makeup.
and economic, yeah.
Well, then
Correct.
She have to go get it made for a different way.
Well,
You
not
could-
fair.
You could also
Yeah,
you can go to future coming. Yeah, the math.
Right.
Shoma Baila. Next case. Right? Now you have this. Shoma. Oh, wait, did I skip a case? I might have skipped it. Shoma Avia behavior level speak about Lishma Ashmeisab. So yeah, Meisab Lishma. Fine. Shoma Baila. Vehefirla. So the husband hears. And he says, let's revoke it. No good. He speak of Lishma, then the father hasn't heard about it. Ad Shemeisabal until the husband dies.
So it should be the exact same case.
Exact same case, opposite, but father versus husband. Zohi shanino meis habal nisraik nalushisav. This is the case we're talking about where the so this is the case we're talking about where if the husband zohi shanino meis habal, if the husband dies, then nisraik nalushisav. So why in this case, right? It's a shama baila, right? Then he revokes it, and then the father never heard until the husband died. So that's the case. So why does it go to Rishus Ha'av? So the Rishus Ha'av is stronger in this case. This is where we say that the Rishus Ha'av is stronger. That since over here that that the husband heard, but nevertheless, it was always within the it was within the power of the father. It was in other words, she was still in the Rishus Av and never came out. So therefore, even though in this case that the husband heard and he revoked it, right, and the father never heard. So it's like she goes back once he dies. She goes back to her father's house. If a regular girl is in her father's house, she's a Nara. The father has the full capability. She was never in a Nesua, right? She was never married. She was never out of his house. So therefore, it goes back like she's somebody who is just a Nara in his house, and therefore the Rishus is La'av, and therefore the Av can go ahead and nullify this vow.
In the first case we had when he's in the husband's.
It didn't work. The Rishus didn't pass over.
Passes away, now she's fully in the husband's house.
Right, but when the father dies, it doesn't make her like a Nesua, right? Right.
She's only told
So
not
she's
to-
still right, exactly. Now, Shama by law. Let's say the husband hears the Hayfir law. If the husband hears and he revokes it, he speak of lishma ad shemes, and the father didn't hear yet, and the father died, and he died. So in other words, the husband heard, he revoked it. Wait till your father hears, he's going to revoke it, and all of a sudden the father had a heart attack, he died. Ein haba yachal hayfir. The husband cannot go say, okay, well, I did my half. The father died, and let me just go revoke it again or use his tzad. Once that happens, because he was alive when she made the vow, and even though despite the fact he never heard it, it cannot be revoked. Ain't about yachal hayfir. Ain't about meifir el b'shutfus, because the husband going to b'shutfus. However, shama aviha, right? The fifth and final case, right? I actually think there's in the art scroll, there's a little guide. Those are the art scroll, right? So Shama Avia, the Hayfir law. Now, what this other case? The father heard when she's an Amarasa, and he revokes it. He speak Habal Lishma Achemes. The husband never heard Achemes. Chayzer Ha'ab Umeifir Chelko Shabal. So the father goes back and goes ahead and revokes it, right? He goes ahead and he's Mayfair it again. Now we don't just say that's already revoked. Sounds like there. He goes back and he revokes it mitzad the husband, and therefore this is revoked. So once again, the father has a better position than the husband. And Abraham Nassan hein divrei Beisham. Now, this is the opinion of Beisham.
Just this last case or all?
This last case. Beisham ein yachol lehefer. The husband, the father cannot go ahead and revoke it. So Beis Shammai says the father can revoke it, and Beis Shammai Beis Shammai says he can, and Beis Hillel says ein yachol lehefer. So what's going on here? The Beis Shammai migas gayis. So according to Beis Shammai, we'll say that each one goes ahead and does half. So therefore, the father did his half completely kosher, and the father is nisrotna, right? The rishus goes to the father, right, from the husband to the father, and therefore the father can go ahead and now do the other side. So therefore that'll work. And the Beis Hillel maklish kalish. And according to Beis Hillel, so the rule is that once a neder is nullified by one party, so here comes some of the lumdus, right? So once the one of the parties, he weakens the neder, right? By weakening the neder, right, it doesn't necessarily fall to the other party. Once it's weakened, right, then it doesn't have the ability to fall to the other party. So therefore, according to Beis Hillel, when the father goes ahead and revokes it, right, he weakens the neder, right, that then once the husband dies, right, he can no longer, it's not like he acquires, right, it doesn't go the other half. It's already weakened, that can no longer be revoked, and therefore, since it's no longer revoked because it's weakened, so Shema Mina, according to Beis Hillel, ein yachol lehefer. So therefore, such a neder cannot be revoked by the father. And I guess we'll stop over here. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we do have to discuss.